Okay. And it
It,
is six. Okay, great. It's six. And with the six of us gathered at this moment, we're going to start and see what happens and enjoy this
oh, there's
sojourn.
one more
Oh,
game.
there'll be more. It's all good. Like I only start some things on time and I never end anything on time, so I'm told. So it is all good. Let's pray. God who sees us. As we dive into this chapter of the Bible that certainly probably isn't one of anybody's favorites or one that we even remember necessarily, and yet still speaks in ways that might allow us to see your hopes even for today, that allows us to see the reality of humanity and your care for those cast aside. May it widen our vision to your compassion so that we simply don't see you in these ancient texts as some kind of tyrant, but as the one the Christ called Father. We pray this in the strong name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well,
Ooh,
good
one
evening,
more.
everybody. How you doing?
Great.
Great. We'll take it. And I knew that about you already, Bill. Today, we're going into Genesis chapter 16. And we did Genesis chapter 15, and that was again a covenant laid to Abraham again in fascinating ways. First staring at the stars, and then the kind of sacrifice that if you want church that might bring some of the young people, if you can make that one happen again, go for it. But of course, simultaneously, he was in a dark whatever right then. So, c'est la vie. And if we were to talk about like maybe Genesis 12, beginning this idea of promise toward Abraham, always kind of centered around the land. Now we're in a part of Genesis where we get to pay more attention to the family, if you will, and and hear more about the promise of a child. Um, and Genesis gets to be kind of like real life. And by real life, I mean when when you read some stories, and certainly like these are not people of like our contemporary times, but they are people that seem like they might be real.
Real.
Let's see some of the realness of this moment in Abram and Sarai. And so we're going to read through Genesis 16. It's 16 verses long, and and it's interesting, I think. So, anybody who wants to, I invite you to read Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 6.
I will.
Thank you, Linda.
Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my handmaiden, maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." And Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after he had been living in Canaan for 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife, and he slept with Hagar, and she conceived. And when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. And then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my servant in your arms, and now she knows she's pregnant and she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your servant is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." And then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her.
All
Yeah,
right. Absolutely, right? Like,
geez.
What a fascinating kind of way we get to see these things. And we'll just start here. Okay, so what do we know as we're looking at this right away?
Well, Sarah doesn't have the same faith Abram does.
We might say that, certainly, right? Like, doesn't it seem like Sarah's trying to get involved in such a fashion as to expedite
Fit
God's
along.
promises? And there's a solid interpretation of this scripture to be said by that. What happens when we try to figure out God's timing for God?
It's usually wrong.
Yeah, has anyone ever tried to figure out God's timing for God and it worked out all right for you?
No.
No, at my last church before I arrived, apparently there was some kind of committee of people who were put together to consider how the church could change. Or I don't have any idea exactly. And when they presented this, and they worked like years of meetings doing these things, and presented this incredible thing to the session, I'm told, and we're told by the session, no, we're not going to do any of that. And they all left. Like to a T, every one of the people on that committee left because they worked so hard to do that, and it was, whoa. Um, and yeah, because sometimes when we try to put all those plans into our own hands, again, it doesn't quite work out the way we anticipated. Simultaneously, we read that into it. Does the narrator here seem to be judging Sarah the way we might? No. Why might Sarah try an avenue through which to fulfill these promises of God?
Was it more accepted in those days?
Don't we still try to say that we are the hands and feet of Christ? Don't we still say that to do the work of God, it still takes someone to do it? Don't we recognize that Jesus wanted disciples in an effort to ensure that people are doing the work? Haven't we always recognized that to some degree we believe that God often works through us? Maybe it isn't simply Sarah giving up faith, but notice in the promises of God, so far as we've heard them, it's that Abraham will be a father of many nations. And while we know that God saw Abraham and Sarah, in those promises, have we heard that Sarah is going to be the mother of many nations?
No.
Don't think so.
Now, look how easily we judge her for something that each one of us has done. But we also judge her because we know that there's an issue with promise believing going on here.
Well, she blamed
Now, we
God.
also happen. Oh, she blames Abraham for these things, or she
She said,
talks about how the Lord has prevented me. Yes,
yes, she was blaming
and
God
like,
for.
well, at that point in time, if you couldn't have kids, it was always God's fault. And
Oh,
well, let's be honest, we blame God for anything that's not working our way, and we're like, this is your fault, and perhaps it is. I don't know exactly. All I know is if whatever day I am, whatever comes, let's try to take it for what it is. And but simultaneously, aren't there times when we see something that's wrong and try our best, believing that it's what God would ask us to do to fix a situation, to enact a sense of promise, a way that God might be revealed? So Sarah tries to do that. And here now, do we know how like long that it's been in between these 10 things? Like 10 things, I said it out loud. It's 10 years
10
from
years.
like the time that that Abraham has had this covenant moment. Okay, so if you've waited 10 years and you're getting now, like you were already old, but now you're old. And if you think this is anything, like by the time we get to the end of this story and we get to 17, Abraham's going to be 99 and God's going to show up again and say, you're going to be a father of many nations. And Abraham's just like,
Right.
this keeps on going. 10 years. You'd
Sure.
almost expect something. So the narrator doesn't judge her, but simultaneously we can still recognize there's a truth here. We are impatient, and the waiting here is a long time. Things don't go the way we want, the way we expect, and we're not sure. Now, they do take matters into their own hands, but is it the, and even as we see this, and I love Linda's translation, it's very kind, talking about a servant girl, but that's not what this is. Does anyone have a separate translation that describes her a bit more accurately? Maybe in like your verse 2. No, it's all servant?
No,
Okay, then I'll just read.
it's all nice. I think NIV is nice.
Yeah, NIV niced it up, and
Yeah.
and so I'll read some parts. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian slave girl. Why might she have an Egyptian slave girl?
They'd been in Egypt.
They've been in Egypt. Remember chapter 12? They're in Egypt. And remember what happened in Egypt when Abraham was lying because he didn't quite believe in the promise? And notice that it was a lie. And it cursed that kind of situation. This isn't a lie. This is someone trying to help God's promises come to fruition. But she's going to do it with something she received from a lie.
Oh, gee. Wow.
And who is the only one in the first 6 verses of chapter 16 that actually names Hagar?
Sarah. Sarah?
No,
Or the person narrating?
the narrator.
Oh, okay.
Abraham and Sarah never use her name. She's a slave girl from Egypt. The narrator gives her name, but the people of promise don't. Where are these people of promise's descendants going to end up?
Egypt?
Egypt. And the verb in Hebrew in verse 6, my translation says, then Sarai dealt harshly with her and she ran away from her. The verb harshly there is the same exact verb used to describe the Egyptians' treatment of the Hebrews in Exodus chapter 1. It's fascinating how these things kind of play. All right, so there's this slave girl. The narrator gives her name, but she's an oppressed person in this situation. Now, we might also wonder, why is Sarah doing this? It's common at the time to have people of means where one cannot, like the woman can't do that, to have the woman give permission to have another who will be that progeny, who will be that child. This was not an uncommon thing. Now, they go about and do this. So Sarah is only trying maybe in her own kind of way. You see, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children, but she still believes in the promise. She just doesn't believe it's going to be through her. And we haven't heard that it would be. So she's just trying to get Abram to have what he needs. Go to my slave girl. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her slave girl, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. This is not a concubine.
Okay.
There's a moment here where there seems to be a sense of like, I'm giving you as a second wife. This is not a thing, but like, so Sarah is taking away some of her own promise. And let's notice something else about Sarah. How many times have we heard Sarah speak before this? And before you go through the last, like chapter 12, 13, 14, and 15, I'll answer the question for you. It's none. As a matter of fact, in this chapter, we hear a whole lot more from Sarah and Hagar than we hear from Abraham. And that's fascinating as well. So we get to hear a little bit of Sarah, and she speaks of God and how God has treated her. Now we know that she has her own relationship with God. We also have to remember that this is a patriarchal culture, right? I mean, people are like, let's be honest, it's still a patriarchal culture to some degree. I know this. I remember being in places where I'd tell people, like, what does your wife do? And I'm like, oh, I met her in seminary. And they're like, oh, I don't believe in women preachers. I finally said to somebody, like, well, they believe in you just like God believes in atheists. And once I said that, I was like, that's what I always have to say, because the look on the person's face was like, did you just compare me to an atheist? And I'm like, maybe. Like, they exist. What do you mean you don't believe in them? But simultaneously, this was a very different time. Who was in complete and utter control of this family, apparently, supposedly?
The men.
Yeah, Abram. And so Sarai says, hey, we should do this. Abram's like, what does Abram say? He listened to the voice. That's all. He doesn't even respond. If we're going to see issues going on in this family, the only one who's truly at fault is the guy who's supposed to be in control. So Sarai's relationship with God and her desire to fulfill this promise, to have the promise fulfilled, her believing that she's at fault for it, never knowing that she's a part of the promise, says, here's the situation, it's common. Abram doesn't say a thing, but he does it. And then after he does it, now imagine that you were in Egypt. You were probably already a slave of some kind, but maybe you still had some connection to your family. And suddenly, to get this weird couple out of there who'd ruin all of Pharaoh's stuff, you are handed over as a slave to this wandering nomadic couple. And now you are the handmaiden of the matriarch of the whole situation. And in the midst of things, you're now told that you get to be the wife of the patriarch. Do you have any say?
Don't imagine.
No. Do you get to say no? You don't get to say no. Hagar is an oppressed person in this situation, and she is given a position of prominence. If you're an oppressed person who's suddenly given some position of prominence, where you're finally liberated from something, and you're not only made a wife, but now you are the bearer of the child of promise. Might you start thinking of yourself as number one because you've finally made it? And so she does. She starts treating her mistress with contempt. But she's not an equal. She's still a slave. She's not only just a slave, she's also, let's not miss that she's an African slave. Now, let's not miss that she is a slave from the people who will enslave the descendants of Sarai. And so she has to do it. But she finally has this kind of peace and contempt. Oh, probably. Do you want to be ordered around the way you've always been ordered around when you are pregnant with literally the child of promise, according to everybody? Now imagine you're Sarai. You've already been passed off to Pharaoh when you got this girl years ago because your husband didn't have the wherewithal, the strength, the faith, or the courtesy of love to save you from that situation. So you have this girl who's always there to remind you what it was, and now you, in the midst of trying to help your husband secure this promise from God that you weren't necessarily included in, suddenly have this slave girl who always reminds you of the indignity that your husband put you through in the first place, who's now treating you like garbage. Does she immediately start treating harshly Hagar?
Only till she gets permission.
Only first she goes to her husband, and who does she put the blame of the situation upon?
Him.
Him, because he's the only one at fault.
Her idea.
It was he who could have said no. He's still the only one there. He sees what's happening. If he's supposed to be the paterfamilias, Abram, the great father, Abraham, the father of many. And now, even when he's not even fully a father yet, it's from a polygamous situation where everything's gone to HE double hockey sticks and he's not doing anything. He hasn't even said a word at this moment when, like, Sarai is like, may the wrong done to me be on you. Now, maybe Abram's in control, but who seems like the stronger person right now?
Sarah. Sarah does.
But still, who's the one in control? I remember
Hagar.
when, yeah, well, not yet. Yeah, kind of, in a way. Abram is the only one in control. He's just not doing anything with it. And I remember when like, a situation presented itself, and I knew what I had to do, and it was gonna be like bad. I had to do it because it was the right thing to do. We needed the space for a funeral, and it was happening, but there was something else that had been scheduled. But the only time a family member could get there to funeralize a person was right then, and it was not a church event. It was rented out for something basically, but by an elder on the session who had refused when I asked if we could like move him or change the day. I'm like, I can't do that. Anyway, I had to basically move him and his whole event to make room for this funeral, and it was ugly. And I remember not wanting to do anything because I knew it was going to be ugly. It wasn't going to work out harmoniously. Like there's sometimes now when I can ignore whatever. I'm like, yeah, I can't fix that. You know, either work out on something. But there's sometimes where I have to be a leader, and I hate having to be a leader because being a leader sucks. It means you get to be made responsible for all the decisions that nobody wants to deal with it at all. And I was not making them. And I remember I was actually sitting on a meditation mat in my study, and a member of the church who was volunteering, working at the front desk for something, comes in and just says, "You need to make this right, and you're the only one who can do it." And I'm like, "Damn it, it's true." But you know what I wanted to say to her? Go do it.
You do it.
Yeah, you do it. Do whatever you want. Just, I'm like Pilate. I wash my hands of it. I'm like Abram. Do whatever you want. That's going to work out well. She doesn't have that same kind of thing. And like being simply frustrated now and having all of these things that are playing with her. Again, we have to take into account the fullness of the story to understand her kind of emotional sense of things here, especially since it's the first time she's truly speaking and is a character in this story and not just a name. Yeah, you're a slave girl. Your power. Do to her as you want. Whatever you please. So we treated her harsh. She treated her harshly. So harshly that Hagar ran away.
Ran away.
Now, two things that we should just mention. When Hagar starts treating Sarah harshly in this kind of way, and then she runs away with the child of promise, might we consider this a curse to the family of promise? What did God say to Abram about those who cursed him?
That he would curse them.
Yes. So some people think Hagar's cursing him here. Let's see what God does. Because have we seen God show up except Sarai saying, "The Lord kept me from having babies"? Anyone want to read verse 7 through the end of the chapter?
Okay, no volunteers. I'll mess it up.
Shouldn't be so bad.
Till we get down to the beer at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she answered. And then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants, that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now with child, and you will have a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael.
All right. What do we see?
Another promise.
How many of us love this? Yeah, promise. Amen. We see we see a promise. Is this what kind of promise is this?
Kind of double-edged.
Yeah.
Why double-edged?
Well, this person's going to have lots of offspring, which is a good thing. But on the other side, everybody's going to be against him. He's going to be against everyone else, and a lot of hostility.
Now, in Job, when one is called a wild ass of a man, that's a good thing. We might be like, what? But so in the Old Testament, it's mentioned that you can be like a wild ass of a man, and that's okay. And that's fair. No, at odds with everyone's hands and everyone's odds against him too, that's rough. But there's at least 5 times in the Old Testament God says the same thing about Israel. So it sounds a bit rough, but it's a promise. And we know enough about the history of Scripture and the history of people to know that just because it's a promise doesn't mean it's going to be hunky-dory. Now let's see some other things. Who's the only one in this narrative that names Hagar other than the narrator?
Abram.
Not in my version.
The Lord.
So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born.
Yeah, but Abram never called her Hagar.
Well, I thought you said the son. I'm sorry.
Oh, the son's name.
Okay, and
I got you. Amen.
Garrett, can I ask a question, sort of?
Yeah.
So in verse 11, it says, the angel's talking, and he says, you shall name him Ishmael.
Yeah.
For the Lord has heard of your misery, etc. But then in 15, it says Abram named him Ishmael.
Well, that's because Abram probably heard the story.
So did the
from
angel
Hagar and...
talk to Abram too? We don't know.
I imagine Hagar talked to Abram. And we hear so little from Abram in all of this, I wouldn't be surprised if he just acquiesces anyway, because if he suddenly was told that, and I notice too, again, that we're getting the Tetragrammaton, we're getting the name of God. So the angel, and by the way, at this stage of time of the development of ideas of angels, when you hear angel, this is not a winged whatever. This is not a seraphim with like eyes everywhere and flying around. This is not the heavenly host angel. Angel is a word that means messenger. These people at this time encountering a strange person who speaks this way for God believe that they are encountering God. God is someone who can show up in human form to these people. When I talk about Jesus being someone you can see in the grocery store, I'm taking it a little bit like these people who believe that God can simply show up. God in human guise. That old, what if God's just one of us? That might actually be like my time too early for like my kids and too late for everybody else. That's rough. I just had a okay, well don't use those kind of things. Um, I've heard people say God in drag, you know, like that kind of piece. Um, like wearing humanity. Found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. She goes into the wilderness to run away from the people of promise. Fascinating. A slave girl running away from oppressors also goes to the wilderness, but the irony of this one is it is the people of promise. And who finds her? Who is willing to throw her out, give her up, abuse her, not care what happens to her? Let her run away, and who matters? Abram and Sarai. Who refused to give up on her?
The angel or
The
God.
God of Abram and Sarai. Just because God chooses someone doesn't mean that God isn't for others too. And here, you know, when people like get kicked out of the church, say God's done with you, that's crap. And I know it's crap because there's stories like this that happen within the 16th chapter of the Bible. When the people of promise, through whom the whole world is supposed to be blessed, don't do it, God keeps figuring out ways to try to make it happen. Love it. And he said, he names her Hagar, slave girl of Sarai. Where have you come from and where are you going? Notice that this angel messenger God doesn't tell her what's up, but engages her and calls her by name. She was never named by Abram or Sarai. The first thing God does when God shows up is call her by name.
Mm-hmm.
Knows her situation and asks her anyway what's going on. And as we had done the road to Emmaus on Sunday, it's not all that dissimilar of Jesus showing up and asking two disciples on a road, "What are you talking about?" Except even by the use of her name, she immediately knows she's talking to someone who isn't just someone. I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. Notice that she's only talking about the past. She's running away. She has no idea about her future. She's in the wilderness. She's by a spring. She's pregnant. She is afraid. She is a runaway slave. And who shows up but the God of the universe, guised as a human, who calls her by name, asks her what's going on, and the only thing she can possibly imagine is a past she's trying to escape because she doesn't believe in a future. Who else didn't believe in a future and tried to make one but wasn't sure how? That'd be Sarah. But unfortunately, sometimes we forget that the people we're using to try to do our things, we end up oppressing, and then we end up throwing out, or we think that they can't do something, or whatever else, especially in church, the way we've treated so many classes of people because they're not one of us. And here is God showing up. What's going on? Okay, well, God immediately then says, the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. Now, we don't love hearing that, right? Why might that actually be the best option 4,000 years ago?
It's only going to be a problem for a single woman in the wilderness by herself.
Exactly. We don't love hearing this, and we have to be very careful if we ever try to take this passage and rip it out of context and throw back to someone again who's in some kind of abusive situation, go submit to whatever. This is something, but it'd be terrible if God stopped there. But God doesn't. God doesn't say, go submit, and by the way, just go back and submit. Good luck. No. The angel of the Lord also said to her, verse 10, I will, meaning God. This is God speaking. I will greatly multiply your offspring, that they cannot be counted for multitude. Does this promise sound familiar?
Same thing God told Abram.
We will learn, not in this chapter, but in the next, that Ishmael is not the child God promised. But that doesn't mean that God won't give the same promises to this child, even if it might not be the same exact kind of way. You are going to have a lot of descendants, these pieces of things, and that just wow, and like brilliant. And that's more. The angel of the Lord said, so 4 times it has the angel of the Lord said to her, the angel of the Lord said to her, the angel of the Lord said to her, starting with a question but using her name when her name had not been used except by the narrator. The only reason, if the narrator didn't give us the name, that it would have come up if we were watching the movie of this, is because God gave it to us. And then, oh boy, I'm sorry about my dog. I'm sure there's someone walking by happily.
Oh, is that your
Their
dog?
Always. He's sweet to some people, but not to many. Anyway, okay, so like, and now you have conceived and shall bear a son. You shall name him Ishmael. That means God hears. God heard Hagar's fear, plea, worry, need to run away. You're going to name your child. God hears. As if this divine one is saying, I heard you. Was she heard by Abram? Best we know, Abram used her.
I don't think so.
Was she heard by Sarai? Oh yeah, and Sarai didn't like it. And in distress and worry and oppression, the God hears them even if the people of promise don't. Because God is still a God of the oppressed, even if those who are being oppressed are oppressed by the very ones that God is supposed to be for, because they're not living the way that perhaps it believes in any of that promise to begin with. You look at the history of the church and how it's treated so many peoples. No wonder people love the idea of Jesus, but can't stand most people who call themselves Christians. Because they can see this, but God's not giving up on the people of promise either. So we can't just throw everybody under the bus. Isn't this just joyous? God is like, dang it, I have to do it all by myself. No, no, no. Like, I love this story because it's real. When we look at Jesus in the Gospels, we're like, damn, that looks hard. That's a high bar. When I look at Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, I'm like, wait a second. I can do this. If God can be for them and choose them, I'm pretty sure that I'm right on board with that crazy lot. And we haven't even gotten to Jacob yet. Like, by the time we get to Jacob and we know that God is for him, rest assured there is not any kind of mess you can be that God's not for you. To some degree, if God chooses to be all the for you, you're for. You can't get away from it. Ishmael can't get away from it. Hagar can't get away from it. Hagar never even heard the promise of God. She probably watched Abram do these things, participated in worship, but she had no idea. And the narrator is using Lord. She knew this is Yahweh. Oh, yes, now he gets to be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He's going to be at odds with people and his brothers and blah, blah, blah. But isn't that just par for course? Wouldn't it be nice if God said, I'm going to make all your descendants live in peace and harmony perfectly forever and ever, amen? Be like, well, that'll be the first time in the history of the world. Anyone excited by how all their children interact with each other? And most of us might be like, yeah, it's good. But how many of us are just like, oh, this is terrible? Such is life.
If,
Does that mean God's given up on them?
no, if they're perfect, you're lying.
Yeah, seriously. I love my children, but they are not perfect. However, like uh, the younger one kind of thinks she might be, and I'm just like, I am looking your humiliation, and I don't mean that like but your process of going toward humility will feel like humiliation. I can't tell her that, but I'll walk with her and love her as it happens. Um,
It may be
and
the youngest person always does that.
I mean, I keep figuring
Mine,
it out.
even
Like
though
every moment I start to think I'm great at this.
my youngest is a son, but kind of the same way.
Amen. Well, I'm the oldest. I'm just endlessly trying to prove to my parents that they didn't need any more and they ruined everything. So like and after going through Genesis, it is not a good thing to be the firstborn. So like it's all right. Anyway, for Ishmael, for instance, well, that's not so bad. By the way, in the whole of the Old Testament, the rest of the story, Ishmael or the Ishmaelites are never a problem for the Israelites. In fact, the Ishmaelites there's one in the court of King David. His sister marries an Ishmaelite. They fairly live peace and harmony. We'll see that when Abraham dies, Isaac and Ishmael are together as they bury him. There's this kind of reconciliation piece. There is a certain harmony between these brothers that were never necessarily planned and yet blessed. And again, even as we think of these things, and we're using names like Ishmael and Isaac, and speaking of promised land and stuff, we have to be aware as we pay attention to everything going on around us, not just what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and but what's happening in our country and throughout the world as people are going through these things with those who claim to be the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac. And it's hard for me to look at this without seeing what's happening. And seeing how some will say, God promised me, or God promised me, and here's God promising everybody. And yet we might say that God promised us there'd be some like odds with his kin. And yet simultaneously there was never any odds between those kin in the Old Testament.
I was looking at the
But
footnotes and where it says he will live in hostility toward, the footnote says, or live to the east of. How do they get
be
from?
very careful with Hebrew. Anyone who tells you the Bible says exactly what the Bible says, don't understand that Hebrew is not like any language that they have ever spoken. Every word can mean a couple of things and not necessarily the same thing. So yes, live at odds can in fact mean live east of. The translators chose live at odds. And sometimes we just see the point where meaning of Hebrew uncertain. As a matter of fact, the one that we see like this is then, and then let's get to this thing. How many? I got 15 minutes. We're good. In verse 13, so she, Hagar, named the Lord, and you see the capital Lord. So like she names Yahweh. Doesn't the Lord have a name? Aren't we seeing it right there? But she names God. And she says, you are El Roy, which means, I'm sure it's down on somebody's thing, God sees. She names God, God sees, because God sees her. Another thing. Anyone
I
have
think
any
I need to
idea?
get a new version. I think NIV is too kind.
Well, let me see what the NIV says here. You are now the God who sees me. So it translated El Roy in the NIV to God who sees me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in the NRSV, it keeps the name, the Hebrew name that she names him. And like she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees me. So the English is in the NIV is translated it. And in the NIV, for now I have seen the one who sees me. And that's a beautiful poetic version.
Yeah.
And then in the NRSV, when she's like, where it's, I have seen the one who sees me, it's, have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him? Aren't those very different translations? I have seen the one who sees me. I love that. I have seen the one who sees me. It's beautiful. It's there's something lovely about it. And in the English, and in the other version, have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him? I've seen the God who sees me. Have I really seen God and I'm still here? That doesn't sound the same, right? Like, how did they get two very different translations? Well, if you look down at a footnote, if you have one, you probably have a footnote that's like, we have no idea really how to translate this. This is a difficult thing to translate. But if the beauty of this thing, I have now seen the one who sees me, versus the terror of have I really seen God and I'm still here, we recognize there's
Well,
something in Hebrew that can't work in English. A sense of awe and reverence that allows them to combine the terror and the beauty and create the sublime.
yeah, in the note it says to see God's face was believed to bring death.
Oh, absolutely.
And it
And
doesn't
you'll
say
hear this
that in the
again with
NIV
Jacob after he
translation.
wrestles with God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see this after he wrestles with God, Jacob, at the other side of the Jabbok. When after wrestling with God all night long, and he realizes what he's been doing, he's like, have I really seen God and lived? Because they had a sense, what, if you see the Creator, and like, well, like, that's fair. Like, okay, again, as I what if I stood in front of a star? Well, God just, dances with stars and small things, twirls them in the divine hand, and flicks them into things like nothing. Meanwhile, I'm like the sun out there, again, it burns me to a crisp. If I'm out there for a little while, again, I'm so white I'm pink, but if I'm out there for a while, I just turn bright red. People are like, are you okay? I'm like, no, my people, like my ancestors came from where the sun don't shine. And like I needed as much of this to get some vitamin D as possible. Or at least they did. How my other ancestors made it over on boats just in the sun, I'd have no idea. I think we probably all died of some kind of terrible cancer, dried up early on in life. But I appreciate what they did to bring me here. I'm grateful. Anyway, I'm all over the place. I apologize. But Hannah is addressing God. I'm sorry. Hagar is addressing God. She's been seen by God, and she is the only one in the Old Testament who names God. There's names for God given already, but there's not a moment in the Old Testament anyone else says, I'm going to name God.
Hmm.
What kind of power of experience must one have to name God? One who felt unseen, unheard, uncared for, unlost, and found the God, or the God who found them, who sees, hears Ishmael. She believed she had no future, but she's told to go back and submit. She needs, apparently, maybe to be free from the whole wilderness thing. And if she submits in that way, it doesn't mean like take the beatings per se, but if you suddenly have this different kind of way, perhaps it's just not going to be this kind of trial and tribulation. And somehow or another, Abraham names Ishmael. We get this piece of going on. And therefore, the well was called Lahai Roy. I can't say that. You did a really good job, Steve, by the way. You just went right through them. It sounded brilliant. And in lies between these things. Stunning. Stunning. And then again, we just get the narrator. Hagar's back. Born Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. And we get to see that piece. In verbs 1 and 2, in verses 1 and 2, the verbs there too, where Abram's wife bore him no children, and this whole thing, bearing children, this hope that Sarai had of the promise being fulfilled does in fact sound at the end of the chapter that the promise is in fact fulfilled. Do you notice that? Hagar bore Abram a son. It's done. Or is it? Isn't it a joy that sometimes we think maybe God's done what God's about to do, and this is okay, this is decent, this is working, this is good. But there's always a potential moment for it to be much more interesting than we can possibly imagine. Does anyone remember what the name Isaac means before we even get to chapter 17 and hear his name mentioned for the first time?
Laughs.
Laughs. Laughter. What a beautiful name. And now God is going to tell this to Abraham in chapter 17. And in chapter 17, we're 13 years later. Abram's 99. And God shows up and gives a promise like there's no son. We'll see it. I don't have to go into it next week. And Abram seems genuinely surprised. Because while we were quick to judge Sarah, in her work to try to do something to fulfill what she believed was the promise to her husband, God takes so long to do what God wants that for 13 years they thought Ishmael was the promise. For those who think that Hagar was a curse to Abram or Sarai for the way that she treated Sarai or that she ran away with perhaps his child of promise, God immediately reaches out to her and makes a promise to her. And it is this promise that she hears from the one who hears her and who sees her, who calls her by her name, who meets her at a well, or, a well made by God, in the heat of the day of the wilderness, and tells her everything about herself. An outsider who might be considered something that isn't the promise. And in the midst of all of this, God promises. And we have this strange thing is it fulfilled? And we'll see immediately that it's not. I guess we have like 6 minutes left, and I don't need to say any more. I could wax poetic. I could get preachy. But what does it mean that Hagar and Ishmael received the continuing promises of God? And what might the fulfillment of such promises mean for the people of God? Not least for their continuing relationship to their descendants, Ishmael and Isaac. What might it mean to continue to confess in and through the retelling of this story that the Ishmaelites are who they are because God has kept God's promises? What would that be like to say to whatever situations people are going through where they start using ancient scriptures to justify current political actions? I'm not ever going to try to do that to the text because the text isn't considering any of this, but the text is certainly considering. And God's a little bit different than we know. Because God is a creator who promises to those who do not belong to the, quote, people of God. And if God promises things to those who do not belong to the people of God, what kind of God do we have?
For everyone.
And they don't need to think like you, believe like you, look like you, be like you, feel like you, or anything else like you. And just because they're completely different than you, and you think I'm in and you're out, apparently God doesn't even care. And if you start telling me things like, well, curses and God doesn't care about that. But God will endlessly run after the one who's abandoned and oppressed, especially if they're abandoned and oppressed by the very place where they're supposed to encounter the God who's trying to be a blessing to all through. And Sarah tried that. And yeah, I know that was a difficult situation, and Abram could have done better, and maybe Hagar could have done better, and whatever else. The only one I judge in this narrative is Abraham, by the way. I like judging Abraham. But I don't judge him either. Not really. This is just a story about people who are trying their best. And like many of us, when we've tried our best, it doesn't go the way we want, and sometimes it feels like a curse. And it's a story about God in the midst of us trying our best when things are not working out, where God starts making promises. And when God starts making promises, the only one who's believing in them right now is the only one who's pregnant. And the others believe in a promise that is a different one, but they believe it's fulfilled. Is the promise done? Do we need to understand that the promises were fulfilled? Are there promises still to go? We don't know yet. Well, we do know. We know the whole story by and large. But this story, how often have we, for those of you who've read the Bible through in a year over and over and over and over again, or just, like read the same things over and over again, how often do you remember the story that ended up here? Now, you might know more of Genesis 21 when Ishmael and Hagar are sent off totally because it's going to sound like a repeat, but isn't that the joy of life? I like that we're going to begin encountering stories that sound like stories with Abraham we've already heard. Why? Because Abraham is a guy who made sure he made the same mistake more than once. And he's still the father of faith. There's a lot of grace here. There's a lot of honesty about human relationships. There's a lot of honesty about familiar relationships. There's no easy answers. But in the midst of questions that could be geopolitical now based off this story or simply familial, while it offers no answers or easy solutions because we're left with Hagar still a slave under the care of things, she's now there believing in a future. We're a people of resurrection. We can never stop believing that God's going to do something wonderful in the future. That's a lot, and I'm done. I don't need to belabor it anymore. You guys spend so much time me going 30 minutes over, something like that. Here's 30 seconds less. God bless you. Thank you. Amen. Oh, even the prayer done. But, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, again, I love this stuff. The stories, the ways they go, the hearing the thing. Because immediately, like when I first reading Linda, I was the same way. I'm like, oh, there's Sarah not doing it, and then I was like rereading, and I'm like, oh, calm down, Garrett. What's going on? And if you play with the whole thing, these are people who are real. Are they stories? Who cares? The best stories that I have that I tell about my own life over and over again, I'm not even sure they're real anymore. I've told the story so many times. But I tell it over and over again because every time I tell someone that story, in whatever kind of moment that I feel that story is good, whether or not I even remember that I'm telling my story the way I've told it so often, or I'm telling something that actually happened, it becomes real for them. And they get to know in my own story that their story is real too. So maybe you're a family of promise and nothing's working out right and you're trying, but it's not working. Everything seems to happen. Maybe you're someone who got caught in the cog of things and feel like you were given things taken away. It's abusive, it's hard, but you, in the midst of all of this, is still the one who keeps promising. And wouldn't we like more than a promise? But what does it mean to keep believing?
I answered you. I said results. I was muted.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's because God
Right.
wanted you muted for that one, Steve. Like that was just divine intervention right there. But I appreciate you being like, nope, no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Results, that's what we want. But again, it's not always what we get, at least not the way we expect. And that's why sometimes when people start praying for things and I hear what they're praying for, or they tell me I'd like you to pray for this, I'm like, I'm not praying for you like that. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, I don't think you know what you're asking for. And they're like, what do you mean? This is what I want. I'm like, I know what you want. I just also know how God might hear what you want. So let's not go that way. But anyway, it's all good. And
There's a
thank you
country
for
song
journeying with
about
me
that.
through this. Oh, there's always a country song for anything I might say about like, God and what you want.
Thank
But
God
anyway.
for unanswered prayers.
Yes.
Amen. Oh, no. Anyway, blessings all. Have a beautiful
Okay.
night, and
Good night.
I'll see you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.